Hey, what is up, guys? This is Nishi from MST.TV here, back with another Market Watch episode. So today we're taking a look at some more cards trending on the market because of their potential relevance in the future. Now, YCS Providence was the last YCS that we will have before Nationals in Indianapolis this year, so everyone is preparing for Nats now. Of course, before that, we're gonna have Battles of Legend bringing us the Orcust and Dragon Maid cards, as well as all the stuff from Duelist Advance, so some pretty big changes leading up to Nationals, though to be fair, a lot of how the game looks right now should still be pretty similar for that format as well. And then right after that, we have another YCS in my hometown of Vancouver. That's where we're going to have Justice Hunters and its 3 new archetypes legal as well. So we have a ton of exciting changes to look forward to over the next couple of months, and that is continuing to cause a bunch of changes on the market now as players get ready. Let's get started. Kicking things off, we have Malice P. Marchhare. So this card is the best card to pull out of Alliance Insight, at least in terms of dollar value, and there is pretty good reason for it. After the ban list, and with the new cards coming from Alliance Insight, I think most players were expecting Malice to be the best deck of the upcoming format. Marchhare is of course a really big boost to the strategy, as it can banish your other Malice monsters to bring them out back onto the field, and it also adds a banished Malice back to your hand, making cards like Allure of Darkness basically free. Now, when Alliance Insight first dropped, Marchhare was around a $70 to $80 card, which is pretty high, but also pretty consistent with how the best card of any given set is generally priced. However, it seems that the card is declining in value with how a ton of players are abandoning Malice in favor of Mitsurugi Raziel, with the new Mitsurugi cards proving to be really strong. As a result, we've now seen Marchhare drop to just over the $50 mark, which is quite a bit lower than I think a lot of players were expecting. Honestly, I don't see Malice going anywhere. I think it'll consistently be like the second best deck in the format, as long as we have this sort of 2-deck format between different Raziel variants and then Malice variants. The other problem is that Alliance Insight doesn't really have many high dollar cards. A lot of the secret rares are actually really cheap, so that sort of keeps Marchhare expensive because people aren't cracking open very much of the product, which is keeping the supply of these cards low and their prices high. With this one, if you were already set on playing Malice going into the format, you probably already own your copy of this card. Really, I would just expect this price to stay fairly steady, maybe a little bit lower at 40, a little bit higher at 60, but around that range as we move towards Nationals. Up next, let's take a look at a really important card. We have Stake Your Soul. So this card is a spell for the Vanquished Soul deck, where you reveal a monster in your hand and then special summon a Vanquished Soul monster from your deck with the same attribute as the revealed monster. Of course, this card is a 3 of in Vanquished Soul, but it's actually even stronger after Duelist Advance. With the new support, Dr. Madlove is now a starter, whereas they really only had Raisin before. So while before, if you didn't have a fire to reveal, Stake Your Soul wasn't as strong, now this card is basically guaranteed to help you out as long as you have either a dark or fire in hand, which is much easier. Aside from just the Vanquished Soul support, the archetype actually mixes really well with the new Canine theme, since Vanquished Soul is going to have multiple level 5 monsters in rotation, and Vanquished Soul Canine is a really strong meta-relevant deck over in the OCG. Now, with the Vanquished Soul cards, basically the whole archetype has been reprinted between the 2024 Tins and then Quarter Century Stampede. However, Stampede made certain cards really cheap, while the ones in 2024 Tins are still fairly hard to pull because the pool of cards was just so huge and you only got so many secret rares per tin. As a result, we have seen Stake Your Soul shoot up in price after the tin reprint. Both the Ultra and Secret Rare versions of this card were really cheap, only $1 or $2. Now, however, we're actually seeing both versions shoot way up, and they currently sit around the $17 to $20 mark on TCG Player. If you did open up some of the tins, make sure that you dig these up because they are likely to continue going up in value as we get closer to Duelist Advance and Justice Hunters bringing us the new Vanquished Soul and Canine cards. I do want to take a second to remind all of you to check out our website, MSTmerch.com. Now, over at MSTmerch.com, we have everything that you will need to optimize your Yu-Gi-Oh! Tournament experience. We have the basics with white, black, pink, and our new purple matted sleeves, which are my personal favorites, as well as smooth and matted sleeves to double sleeve your valuable cards and sleeves with for tournament play. But we also have some other items that you can really use to customize your collection. We have amazing foil sleeves, including some with the MST.TV logo, and dividers and subdividers so that you can keep your collection perfectly organized and easily accessible. Regardless of if you're a competitive or casual player, I'm certain that you'll find something that you will enjoy over at MSTmerch.com. So this is a really weird one. We next have Amorphage Sloth. Now this card is sort of a floodgate monster. Its pendulum effect isn't really relevant since you need to control an Amorphage monster for that to be active, but its on-field effect is that neither player can special summon monsters from the extra deck except for Amorphage monsters. Now with this one, it's a floodgate against most decks of the format, and I believe the idea is that you can special summon this directly out of the deck with the effect of Hieratic Spheres, something that's used by both Dragon Rulers and Blue Eyes strategies. Of course, it is a brick, but if it's brought out at the right time, it can be a very powerful and disruptive floodgate. The one thing I'm unsure about is why exactly it is that people are using this card over Amorphage Goliath, since the two have the exact same monster effect and the pendulum effect and scales aren't relevant. The one thing I can think of is that Sloth is something that you're more likely to be able to tribute summon if you were to draw it, since Goliath requires 2 tributes. And also, like, if Sloth were to get impermed, maybe you could use it to make a rank 6 with a Bestial or an Engraver or something. I don't really know, maybe that one's stretching things a bit too far. Anyways, Sloth only has 2 printings. It was originally a secret rare in Shining Victory. Those are now $15 to $20 each with very few copies available on the market. The card also did get a super rare reprint in Fist of the Gadgets, but that was quite a while ago, and Fist of the Gadgets wasn't a very popular set, so those copies are going to cost you around $10 to $12 each. Overall, even if you are playing this card, it is just a one-of, so it's probably something that I would be looking to get rid of your extra copies of while it's seeing a little bit of hype. So this is a card I didn't think we'd see for a long time. It's Cashira Theosis. Now this card was a huge one back in Cashira format. You target a Cashira monster you control and special summon another one out of the deck with a different attribute, but then you're locked into Ixies from the extra deck for the rest of the turn. Also, if this card is banished, you do get to add a banished Cashira card back to your hand. Now, over in the OCG, the Cashira engine doesn't see any play. I believe Fenrir is banned over there still, and Unicorn is actually limited. However, both are at 3 here in the TCG, and so the engine is still pretty popular and is something some players choose to splash into their decks. Most recently, I believe that a player actually made it to the top 32 at YCS Providence with Regenesis Cashira, and with his Cashira engine, he ran more than just the typical Fenrir Unicorn in Birth. He actually chose to run a single copy of Theosis as well. It's definitely an interesting card to include, but it makes sense since Regenesis doesn't need to go into the extra deck at all. Theosis was originally a secret rare in Photon Hypernova, and then it saw a reprint in the 2024 tins. When those reprints dropped, Cashira wasn't seeing any play at all, and I think everyone just assumed that Theosis wasn't going to see play moving forward because it would only be good in pure Cashira, so you were able to buy the card for like $2. However, with the card seeing play all of a sudden, either secret rare version is actually going to cost you around $8 to $10. Nothing too crazy, especially since this card is probably just going to be a one-of if you're splashing the engine in, but definitely something that's worth noting because of its sudden surge in value. Alright, this is a card that I've seen popping up every now and then for the last few months. It's Imperial Iron Wall. Now this card's a really simple floodgate as it prevents either player from banishing any cards at all. Of course, this card is seeing a bit of side deck usage because it completely shuts down the Malice strategy, which was expected to be the best deck of the upcoming format. It is also a good card against something like Crystron, which wants to be able to banish cards from the graveyard in order to search. Overall, I don't think this card is super popular. It is still vulnerable to cards like Feather Duster or just cards that can hit back row, but it's still something that players are interested in because of how simple it is to use and because its effect can last multiple turns. Maybe if your opponent is only prepared for Chaos Hunter and they're including Nightmare Cerberus in their extra deck to out it, they might not have an out to Iron Wall and they just have to scoop it up. Anyways, Iron Wall has multiple common and rare printings, so it's a very easy card to just have access to. However, the card has just 2 holo printings that are fairly old. It was a super rare in one of the first OTS tournament packs, and then it also had an ultra rare printing in Legendary Collection Joey's World, I believe. Either holo version is going to cost you about $5 to $6. Nothing too crazy, but this card was really cheap at only $1 or $2 before. Up to you guys, and if you want to fully bling out your side deck or just play with those more easily accessible cheaper printings. Up next, let's take a look at Soul Servant. So, of course, Dark Magician is one of the most iconic monsters in the game, and they just revealed some new Dark Magician support over in the OCG, including what is effectively a Link 1 monster. I don't think it's going to be enough to bring it up to where like Blue Eyes is right now, but hopefully the deck can be competitive enough to top a locals or regional. Because of the new support, Soul Servant is a card that has gotten a lot of attention from the secondary market. This is a quick play spell that lets you place a Dark Magician card from your hand, deck, or graveyard to the top of your deck, which sets you up for Dark Magical Circle, and also you can banish this card from your graveyard to draw, depending on which Dark Magician monsters you have in rotation. So overall, this card is a really solid card for the deck that you're probably going to run at 3. Now unfortunately, despite having multiple printings, all of them are actually quite difficult to find, so the card has gone up in price all across the board. This was in the nostalgia pool of Quarter Century Bonanza, so we have seen the Quarter Century printing shoot all the way up to around $60 to $65, and then even with the Platinums, those were down at about $4 to $5, they're now up to around $10 each. The card was also an Ultra and Secret Rare, but they were both in Legendary Duelist type products that weren't very heavily open, so either one is going to cost you around $8 to $10 per copy. I feel like this card should definitely be reprinted when the Dark Magician support does come out. Since Dark Magician is just so iconic, I feel like Konami wants to make this deck accessible to everyone, but this card definitely does have the potential for all of its different versions to continue going up before it comes down. And finally, the last card we have for today is Red Eyes Dark Dragoon. So this card is one of the most broken monsters in the game's entire history. It can't be targeted or destroyed by card effects, it can negate anything by discarding a card, and if you used a vanilla to make it, you can blow up your opponent's monsters and burn them for damage as well. So over in the OCG, the Draco Tail strategy has emerged as one of the best decks in the game. We won't get too much into the deck here. They are really strong, and some variants have actually chosen to incorporate Red Eyes Dark Dragoon, along with a couple of main deck cards to help facilitate making it. Now obviously Dragoon is fantastic in basically any deck that is able to bring it out, since a walking indestructible negate is pretty good. That said, however, a lot of the builds that are topping over in the OCG actually aren't playing the card, but we don't know what players will eventually choose to do here in the TCG because it will depend on the format and how players choose to adapt. That said, players are looking at grabbing high rarity copies of Dragoon. Now fortunately, this card was in Rarity Collection 2, so it has all of those cheaper low-end printings that are easily accessible. However, it did get a Starlight Rare printing in Brothers of Legend. Those were going for around $100 to $110. They're now up to the $170 mark. And then the card also has a QCR printing. Those were down at about $30 to $35, but they have since doubled in price up to the $65 to $70 range. Definitely an interesting one to keep an eye on, though if you are looking for a budget option, the Secret Rares are still really nice and are only going to cost you a couple of dollars. Alright guys, that is all I have for today. Definitely a bunch of interesting stuff, and I didn't even get to cover everything I wanted to talk about because we also have like the hero cards that were revealed. There's the DDD stuff that's coming out in the new core set, and I'm sure we're going to have a bunch of other stuff revealed in the next couple of days. So be sure to stay tuned, and I'll definitely be doing another market watch later on in the week where we'll talk about some more of those changes as well. Anyways guys, if you did enjoy today's market watch, please make sure you let me know by hitting that thumbs up button. Make sure you leave a comment in the comment section down below. Hit subscribe if you haven't already, and until next time guys, don't forget to hold on to your MST.TV.